All right, well, let's get back to one of our top stories where, of course, we take you back to KwaZulu-Natal, where we've been looking at the impact of heavy rainfall and flooding in some areas, also impacting some of the more vulnerable communities. And we get a little town and regional planning perspective now from Professor Hope Hangwelani, Magidimisha-Chipungu. Prof, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. As we look at the images of the floods that we see coming out of Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, your first thoughts, particularly from a town planning point of view, should we still be in a position where communities are seeing such heavy flooding, or have there been opportunities for the improvement of town planning in Durban? I think let's start there.
Yeah, good evening, Naledi, and to all your viewers. I think maybe the starting point will be to say the issue around what's happening in KZN is going to be a common norm, and we need to come up to speed with that. It's not just going to be in KZN, because the climate change is not just a KZN issue, it's going to be a global phenomenon, but we are going to be affected the most. So this issue is not the last time it's going to happen, and we need to act now. Now, your question around should we be expecting these people dying? Of course, we can expect that people will die, but maybe we want to minimize the impact when that is happening, because it's an accident, it's a natural issues. But what are we supposed to be doing, therefore, from a town planning perspective? I think we should be talking more about what I said before, that we need to plan our cities with risk in mind. So we call that risk-informed urban planning. And that means that we need to put different strategies in place when designing our cities and developing other areas. Now, maybe what is critical here is that I do not think that we do have in the instances where we need to relocate people, because some areas where people are staying, they need to be relocated. And from planning perspective, because they are obviously in the wrong place where they're not supposed to be staying, and we need to relocate them. And I think that is a sensitive topic that we don't want to talk about it. But do we have a strategy of relocation? Now, once we have the disaster, now we know people that are in the low-lying areas. What are we doing about that to make sure that we relocate those people? What we have been doing, and this is not just in KZN, even in other parts of the country, we are relocating people temporarily and give them temporary shelter. But what's happening in the long run? Of course, I know it's a question of whether we have land and we have resources to do that, but we cannot start talking about solutions if we are not going to, or not willing to face the realities as it relates to how do we relocate people.
Yeah. So I mean, those are two important issues, right? Planning forward, because these incidents with climate change being a reality, that we're going to be seeing more and more of these incidents. And then there's, the relocation of people and a working strategy. Give us recommendations. So what is a working relocation strategy in your view, and where are we missing the mark? And just on the issue of planning ahead, as you look at, local municipality, even provincial government, if you think how you rate the level of planning ahead, if you can give you an even out of 10, if you're keen to do that.
Yeah, I'm not too sure I'm able to rate the municipalities or even the country as a whole or provinces, but I'm able to say whether what we have in place is enough to prepare us for the next disaster when it hits. And my immediate answer will be no. We are not ready. We are still found wanting. We still have people who are on the low-lying areas. It's a matter of fact. When you have people in the low-lying areas which are not meant for residential areas, when you have heavy rains, they will be affected by flooding. It's as simple as that. Now, so what do we do? What are we doing from town planning perspective? We've been talking about some of the strategies which are very easy to implement. We're talking about what we call carbon sinks when you're designing your land use within urban spaces, where we're able to at least leave some open spaces and some green infrastructure to make sure that we communicate with the nature in a way that is meaningful and in favor of us. That is not happening often. every piece of land that we have is being occupied either by people who are not supposed to be occupying that, because we have a notion that every piece of land within urban environment has to be occupied. That is one. Then the other issue that we need to look at it is the issue that we talk about. It's not necessarily a town planning a factor on, but it cuts across is what we call river channelization. So if we are to channelize our rivers, we need to dig them deeper, right? So and wider. When you are doing that, you are trying to manage water. When water comes in volumes, it has to go down first before it can overflow, which is also a factor which contributes towards overflooding of some of the areas, especially those ones where residential areas they are closer to rivers. Nothing is being done about that. Of course, we do talk about early warnings that we are very big on in South Africa of late. Some of them they're functional, some of them are not functional. But early warnings that we have in place, they are just somewhere hanging. They are not coming comprehensively. So if we have early warning which says that, which warn you to say this flood's coming and the weather's going to be like this, what do you want me to do? Where am I supposed to do? And if you are not giving instruction people to say when early warning hits, this is what you're supposed to do, and this is the resources and where you're supposed to go or the shelter. And we're not doing that because we do not have plan B.
Yeah.
And we didn't plan for that. So those are some of the issues that we need to look at it. I spoke about sensitive carbon sink that we need to be looking at it. But other issue that I've been on record on it is that in terms of the waste collection. You know, I spend time driving around South African cities because part of what I do, I'm a Sachi chair for inclusive cities, and it's very disturbing to find that in most quarters in some cities we are failing to collect waste effectively in an adequate manner. And what happens is that the rains, when they come, they're obviously going to wash that into our drainage system, and everything becomes a mess. And what are we doing about that? We need to do something around that. We need to try to be effective. Of course, when I talk about waste management, I also need to talk about the ordinary people who are the end user of our services, but also our spaces. So in other words, we are saying we need to educate our communities also as to relate to waste collection, that is not just a government issue, it's everyone's responsibilities. You cannot just go around littering everywhere. It does have a dire consequences and it's accumulative. You may think that you're doing it, you are on your own somewhere in your corner, but when if all of us were just to throw a simple thing as a can of Coke or whatever that is, and can you imagine how many can of Coke would be there, and when they accumulate, it becomes problematic.
Yeah.
So every time that we need to also look at that.
Yeah, a collective responsibility. And I think that's really important for us to remember. Prof, thank you so much for your time. Professor Hope Magidimisha-Chipungu, they're speaking to us. She is, of course, a lecturer in town and regional planning at the University of KwaZulu-Natal.